Okay. Right, I believe we're now live. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of Boston Borough Council's Planning Committee. My name is Councillor David Middleton, and I am the chairman of this committee. And on my right is Councillor David Scoot, and he is my vice chairman. Before we move to the agenda, I would invite our officers supporting this meeting to introduce themselves. So we have legal.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Martha Rees. I'm from Legal Services Lincolnshire. I'm the legal advisor to the Planning Committee. Thank you.
And our planning officers.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Megan Epton. I'm a planning officer for Boston Borough Council.
Good morning. I'm Abby Marwood, the Deputy Development Manager for Boston.
And our where is it?
Should I try it again, and then if not, I can contact IT.
Okay. And our administration.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Forrest White. I'm the Democratic Services Officer.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rhonda Booth. I'm Democratic Services Manager. Thank you.
So, moving on to housekeeping rules. Restroom facilities are available on this floor for the ladies and halfway down the main stairwell for gentlemen. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, officers will escort everyone to the nearest safety point in the rear car park. Please ensure when you are addressing this meeting that you do so through the microphone system at all times. Members of the public are free to leave the meeting at any time, and our support officers will escort them down the stairs. And finally, please be advised that abuse or intimidation of any kind will not be tolerated. Anyone who is deemed to breach this requirement will be warned and asked to refrain, and if the behaviour persists, they will be asked to leave the meeting. So we now move on to part one of the agenda and address the preliminary items. To receive apologies for absence and notification of any substitutions.
Thank you, Chairman. We have received substitutions, so we have Councillor Evans for Councillor Bryan, Councillor Richard Austin for Councillor Alison Austin, and Councillor Evans for Bryan I've mentioned. We also have apologies from Councillor Ariane Bath, who unfortunately has had some serious back injuries, so she's now bedridden, so her apologies were quite late on in the evening, so no time for substitutions. That's all, Chairman.
To sign the minutes of the last meeting held on the 18th of July, do I have a committee's agreement to sign these? Before we move to individual declarations of interest in respect of any items on this agenda, I will ask Rhonda to give the standing declarations.
Thank you, Chairman. For public information, I would confirm that standing declarations of interest will be recorded within the minutes for this meeting for all members of this committee who are also members of Lincolnshire County Council, the South East Lincolnshire Joint Strategic Planning Committee, and representatives of internal drainage boards.
Does any member of the committee have any further declaration of interest to make in respect of any item on this agenda? I have one in that I live in approximately about half a mile away from Burton Close. I do frequent the mill every now and again. I don't recognise many faces that have wandered across that bar. But I have to say that it will not, I have no reason to think that I should have any control over Burton Close, and it won't change the outcome of my deliberations. So have we any written questions from members of the public?
There are none, Chairman.
So that concludes the preliminary items, and we will now move into part 2 of the agenda and receive the reports tabled. Our only item of business today is planning application B230180, which is on page 25 of the agenda and will be presented by Ms. Epton, the planning officer.
Thank you, Chairman. He says. Okay. As mentioned, the planning application we're looking at today is B/23/0180, which is a full planning application for the proposed remodelling of an existing dwelling and alterations and extensions to include an attached ancillary annex. The location is number 10 Burton Close, Boston, and we're recommending approval subject to conditions. So you can see here we've got a satellite view of the site location for anyone who's not familiar with the site. It's a residential area just west of Spilsby Road, close to Pilgrim Hospital, and is backed onto Boston High School. It's directly adjacent to two residential dwellings, one to the south and one to the northwest. The north boundary of the site is directly adjacent to the access track or driveway that leads to the dwelling on the northwest. You can see there's a communal green in the centre. And Burton Close has quite a few large properties, a mixture of two-storey dwellings and bungalows. This slide just shows the site location and the red line of the application. You can see that the red line completely borders the site and the area under the ownership of the applicant. It goes right up to the highway, and obviously you can see with more clarity there that access track that I referred to before. So we have the existing elevations here, just for a bit of context. You can see it's a two-storey brick-built dwelling. The main features to note are that main entranceway on the front and the centre of the elevation, the existing single-storey carport and garage, and then the rear balcony, which you can see on that bottom elevation just there, that I believe serves access to the master bedroom. A key thing to note with the dwelling in its existing format is the lack of screening to that balcony in its current form. If I can just point with my mouse. So you can see here that there's a railing there on the northern boundary, and then a similar balcony railing on the south side of the balcony. So there's very little screening in terms of outlook onto the north and south in its existing format. So this slide just shows the existing floor plan. So that balcony does serve bedroom 1, which is a master bedroom, and then you can see the context of the carport and garage. So here we have the existing block plan, where you can see the size of the plots on Burton Close in more clarity. You can see it's quite a large footprint of a dwelling anyway, but you can also see that there is a private garden. You can notice the boundary treatment, so it's a mixture of fencing and hedging and well-established trees on that rear boundary, or the west in this case as you look at it. And you can also note that the existing carport and garage, which is this element just here, is fairly close to that boundary line on the south that borders number 11, I believe. So that's just something important to note in terms of how the site looks currently, but you can see that it's quite spacious in its existing format. So here are the proposed elevations, and initially I imagine that most people are thinking that it is quite a big change, and that's fair enough. They propose to redesign and remodel the whole dwelling, so it is to be expected that it is quite different to the existing. Largely on the front elevation to note, you can see that there is a replacement roof, so there is an increase in height there. They've altered the windows and doors, but they've also kept that main entranceway, just extended it upwards into a glass gable feature effectively. And then they've also got the removal of the single-storey carport and garage, and the erection of that attached annex there. And then on the rear elevation, you can also see that where that balcony previously extended to around about there, where my mouse is pointing, it's obviously extended all the way across that rear elevation. And then this shows that north elevation, which also highlights an addition. Previously, the balcony obviously did have just the railings on the side of it, but in both the north and south views of it. But the proposal includes an extended wall to act as screening onto of the views up north, basically. The floor plans show this in more detail. I've highlighted it here. That wall screens the views onto the north and the south. And then obviously we have the attached annex here, which has been confirmed to be of an ancillary use. And obviously you'll have noted in the report that we are recommending an ancillary condition to effectively limit that use to a connection with the main dwelling that isn't business use. And the footprint of this annex extends beyond the proposed rear elevation to also act as screening from the south view. So effectively, what they're proposing, while it is a substantial change, offers effectively more screening for that balcony. And this slide just shows that additional floor within the attic from the replacement roof and the new attic trusses. This slide just shows the block plan of what's proposed. So you can see it is quite a substantial change to the footprint. But there is a large amount of amenity space available still. That private rear garden still remains just as private as before. There's no proposed changes to the boundary treatments, and the front of the plot is also quite spacious still, even with that extension. It's also clear here from what I pointed out before, the space between number 10 and number 11 has been enlarged slightly by that shift from the carport to the annex. And largely we think that it's, you know, in terms of space on the plot, there's plenty still available, even with the scale of the changes proposed. So I've just got a few site pictures for you. This is the view of number 10 from entry onto Burton Close. So effectively, as you walk down that road off the Salisbury Road, this is your first view of number 10. You can see the varying sizes and designs of two-storey dwellings on the west side. You can also see that vision of Pilgrim Hospital in the rear, and then obviously this communal green that provides a bit of screening. And then this is a view directly opposite of number 10, looking on to number 10. So you can see that the existing screening from the trees is quite substantial. Obviously it will be varied depending on which part of this side of the road you're on, but effectively our point is that, you know, there's quite a physical distance in any case. And then you have a close-up of number 10 and number 11, so you can see that relationship slightly clearer, and then also that access track or driveway that I noted before is just this section here, just to the north of number 10. And then here is a photo of the boundary, the existing boundary between number 10 and 11. I believe the boundary line is around about here, somewhere in half. I believe it's the line from where the fence is just there, but I don't think it's that clear on the slides. But yeah, you can see that it's in very close proximity in its current design. This is just a photo slightly forward or within that access to number 9. So you can see that existing balcony and the lack of screening, and then obviously the boundary treatments of number 10, and then the distance created by that access track between number 10, the directly north neighbour, and then number 9 to the northwest. This slide just shows the view of number 10 and the rear elevation from slightly further down the access to number 9, but by no means at the dwelling of number 9, so there is quite a physical distance. And you can see that that outlook is limited in any case, even with the lack of screening onto adjacent dwellings. And then this photo is taken just next to, I mean, you can see it from the previous slides, this section here of number 10, looking straight down, so you can see that physical distance between number 10 and number 9. And obviously you can imagine the limited views. There would be slightly more than this photo is taken, because obviously it's at a higher vantage point. But you can imagine that they are fairly limited from the boundary treatments, etc. And then this here is a picture of the site's rear garden. You can see that the established trees and hedging and the fence and boundary treatments of the site that were noted on the plans. And you can see that it is fairly, you know, the views will be fairly limited into the garden itself. We have had a number of neighbours writing in to comment and object, and largely their comments relate to the impact of the character. They argue that the design isn't in keeping with the existing area, and that the scale of the dwelling is considerably large compared to other dwellings on Burton Close. And there are other issues relating to parking and highway quality addressed by residents of Burton Close, largely relating to the fact that the road around Burton Close is a privately owned Borough, I believe it's subsidised by the owners and of houses down Burton Close. And they're largely concerned about the loss of the carport, garage, and the effect this may have on parking in terms of residents parking on the road and construction traffic parking on the road and the communal green. And then we also have received comments relating to the impact on amenity in terms of overshadowing as a result of the increase in scale of the property. And then the loss of privacy as a result of that glass, feature on the front elevation and the increase of size of the balcony. And then we've had a few comments in relation to disturbance from construction as well. So in terms of our response to the concerns about character of the area, we do appreciate that it is a substantial increase in the scale of the property, but in terms of how we would consider it, it's not necessarily a negative thing just to be larger in size. When you consider the existing character of the area, a lot of the plots are fairly large, and there's a mixture of two-storey dwellings, bungalows, all of different sizes and designs and layouts as well. So effectively, this increase in and change to the design isn't necessarily considered a negative one because the character of Burton Close isn't exactly uniform. And then in terms of the design of it, it is more modern, it is a remodelling, it's to be expected. However, they have kept a couple of the notable features, like that balcony remains, even if it's a positive or negative considered by some people. And they've also made a feature out of that existing entranceway on the front elevation. And obviously you can see from one of the photos that I put in, I think it was the first photo, you can see that the visual of Pilgrim Hospital is in the rear of number 10 and when you first walk into Burton Close. So, it's not necessarily considered that the size would negatively affect that if the view of Pilgrim Hospital was to be shielded effectively. In terms of the parking issues, we've had Lincolnshire County Council consulted, who would take a look at the number of bedrooms, and the available parking spaces. We've had no objections in relation to the number of parking spaces provided and the access and turning points. I believe there's 4 or 5 parking spaces provided, so we're fairly happy with that amount and feel it's a sufficient amount for the size of the dwelling. And then we can probably get a bit of advice on this, but largely because it is a private track, private roadway, the concerns related to parking on the road and on the green are largely a private matter, so we wouldn't necessarily consider it to be part of this application itself. And then in terms of impact on amenity, the orientation of the dwelling and all of the dwellings on Burton Close sort of all front that green. They've all been designed in a way that, that they receive the perfect amount of light for each one of them, and they're in a position of number 10 is directly north of number 11. And so we don't feel that, the increase in scale will increase the shadowing of the property to a detrimental level, because it won't affect any habitable rooms of any of the dwellings and the communal space in the centre. There's also, in terms of the loss of privacy and the concern over that glass feature on the front, it's considered that that communal green in the centre is fairly large. This existing screening, that distance created between the dwellings on the west side of Burton Close and the dwellings on the east side is fairly substantial, so that glass feature wouldn't cause any negative issues in terms of overlooking or loss of privacy, etc. And also on that note, in the terms of the balcony, obviously there is an existing balcony there, so that principle is almost set. It doesn't have any existing screening in its current format, so it's considered that level of screening provided by that added wall and then the footprint of the annex is proposed to be, an addition that's positive. And based on that screening and the existing distances between dwellings, it's not really considered that there will be a substantial loss of privacy. That rear boundary is screened heavily by existing landscaping features, so there's not really considered to be a threat to privacy of any residential neighbours or to the grounds of a high school. And in terms of the construction, it is a householder application, so effectively, I believe it's monitored by environmental health normally, the level of dust, noise, etc. But but it's not. We haven't really considered it to be a type of a form of development that would exceed the usual levels of noise dust that is to be expected from a household or extension. But obviously, I think it is within our remit to impose a condition on hours of construction if it was felt necessary by the committee as like a measure to reduce the impact. So based on that, effectively, we do appreciate it is a substantial change, but the main issues effectively can be explained reasonably, and we are recommending approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We do have registered speakers on this item, and we ask Patricia Fenton-Fowler to come forward, please. If you come to that table, you have 5 minutes in which to address the meeting, and a single bell will sound at 4 minutes 30 seconds, and 2 rings will sound at the end of your time. The floor is
Thank
yours.
you. Get close. Okay, can you all hear me? Yes. I'm just waiting for the auto cue to come up. No, you don't. Right, good morning. I am Patricia and I live in Burton Close. I've been asked to speak on behalf of 16 of the residents of the Close. There are apologies for the absence of some residents, but I speak for 10 out of 14 houses who wish to voice their concerns. You will have read many of these concerns already in letters submitted. Perhaps this meeting could have been avoided if there had been better communication all round, particularly in the early stages. We are concerned that it is not a remodelling, but more of a new build, which would have had more stringent regulations. The plans are certainly not going to be in character with the rest of the 1960s built properties. The new house will dominate the close with its combined width and height. There are 8 one-storey bungalows, 2 dormer bungalows, and 5 houses, but no 3-storey houses. Comparing the height to the towering Pilgrim Hospital, a public building, is not comparing it to the neighbours' properties. Will it be acceptable to build many stories to all the houses within sight of the hospital, as they're not as tall as the hospital? The new house's roof line will be 2 metres above its nearest neighbour, which will make it stand out. Modern materials, such as the glass frontage, will make it incompatible with the other dwellings. We're also very worried about the road, as it's already sinking and crumbling. Will it be repaired after all the heavy machinery has made it even worse? If so, by whom and when? Also of concern is the green area, which is privately owned, and the trees are deciduous. We do not want it used or damaged. Would it be possible to have a condition that protects the green? We have no objections to renovations, but we ask that they are sympathetic to the decor and structure of the other houses. The planning officers say that in their opinion, the proposal would not have unacceptably severe harmful impacts on the character and appearance of the area. This implies, that there are some acceptable severe harmful impacts. Should it not be down to the residents affected to say what is acceptable? We have to live there every day, and many of us are retired, and therefore often in during the working hours of the builders too. We anticipate considerable noise, dirt, dust and disruption. Can we have a timescale for completion condition if this is passed? None of this is personal, and we remain a very friendly and welcoming close with at least 2 community events a year. We just ask for our voices to be heard and listened to. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And now we have the applicant, Mrs. Norris. Would you care to come to the table, please? May your representation and the same timings apply to yourself.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak on behalf of our application. I would like to highlight and discuss some points which have been raised by our neighbours. We have only recently moved to 10 Burton Close, and we are both approachable people and would have welcomed any one of our neighbours into our home so we could discuss our proposal and clarify our intentions and allay any fears that may have come about. First of all, we need to eliminate the misconstrued opinions from some about who will be living at the property. They will all be my family members, and we have no intentions of becoming a HMO or any other subletted or mixed used property whatsoever. Our elderly parents, who many of our neighbours have met in person, wish to move from Sussex and to live with us Our proposal therefore introduces an attached annex to the side of the property with a level of accommodation to allow them to live independently. The enlarged living and bedroom accommodation in the principal dwelling is purely for myself, my husband, my children and my grandchildren that can come and stop with us when they stay. We understand nobody likes change, and we wholeheartedly appreciate that many of our neighbours have lived here for a large part of their life. However, we own this property, we work extremely hard, and we have every right to want to make it our own. With regards to the build process, the approach has always been focused on least disruptive route for us and our neighbours. We want to build around the property in order to slightly enlarge the level of accommodation and then remove the existing walls from within an enclosed new shell. My husband, as a professional and experienced tradesman, will be undertaking the majority of the work himself considerably and conscientiously. Despite the concerns of many, we do not wish to cause any negative impacts on our local community in any way, and we assure our neighbours that all matters, including the parking of vehicles and creation of noise and dust, will be taken into account during our whole construction process. The road on Burton Close is the only way to deliver our materials into the site, like any other delivery. For example, the refuse lorry that comes around, the emergency vehicles that may need to come around, which also service our neighbours, and we expect that we're within our rights to use the road the same as everybody else in the residence. It's just a polite reminder, it's actually a public road and it's owned by the council. Our application has been called into committee for the impact upon the character and appearance of the area. How can there be a distinct character when all the properties are entirely individual, all within their own rights? We are not in a conservation area, and we shouldn't have to conform to a particular style of where there is no prevalent style in existence. If anything, the modern enhancement proposed offer a vast improvement both visually and from an energy efficient and more sustainable overall construction. We propose to use a sympathetic palette of materials to complement that area. With regards to the scale of the proposal, yes, it is being enlarged and the ridge height will increase. The eaves height has not changed, and after revisiting the pitch of the roof, the proposed ridge would be no more than approximately 20 centimetres, that's less than a ruler, above that of number 12, which is the tallest property on Burton Close, which actually has a greater height in the eaves than our proposals. There is plenty of separation between all the existing dwellings, and we are all fortunate to benefit from large spacious plots. The proposal actually increases the distance between us and our neighbour at number 11 to provide parking for 2 cars adjacent to the proposed annex. Turning to some of the features of the design, the proposed glass front will serve nothing more than an entrance, landing space and the stairs. They're not habitable rooms and no one will be overlooked. In the same way that no one will be overlooked from the rooms in the roof, which will have roof lights installed above eye level. The purpose of these rooms is for myself and my husband to have rooms where we can pursue our hobbies. Finally, the balcony to the rear already exists. We're simply proposing to increase it to serve all of the bedrooms, and to put concerns at rest, the projection of the annex to the rear has specifically been designed to block out the view of the neighbours' gardens, which, for the record, we have zero interest in. Thank you once again for your time to consider our application today. I hope you will support your planning officer, who has worked diligently with us to produce this scheme in front of you today. We hope that you will agree with your planning officer's professional and definitive recommendations for approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will come back and ask the speakers questions once Councillor Cresswell has had her say.
Thank you.
So now we have Councillor Cresswell taking the table, and I think you don't have any constraints on how long you can speak.
Right, how long have we got?
Well, I'd like to be on for lunch.
Okay, first of all, I'm sat here obviously as the Trinity Ward Councillor and to support my residents who live in this area, specifically in Burton Close. I too would like to start by saying thank you to Megan and the other officers who have been involved. They've diligently worked on this. They've answered my questions, residents' questions, and anything else we've come up with along the way. I'd like to go first of all back to 8.1, where it says it would not have acceptably severe harmful effects. This, I believe, is an opinion. I've spoken with the residents and we wondered whose opinion that was. This is certainly not 3/4 of the residents that I have spoken to. They believe the build will have unacceptably severe harmful effects on the close. So I just wondered whose opinion that was. If I can just go back to some of Patricia's points. The residents are very concerned about the height of the building. It will be the only 3-storey building on the close, and from when you look at it, you can see that it does appear to be significantly higher than the other properties. It is a single track road around Burton Close, and there is no way that 2 cars can pass at the same time. We mentioned, Mrs. Norris mentioned about refuge lorries and emergency vehicles. Obviously, they are ones that are travelling around the close and leaving. If there would be no availability for parking on that road, because you would be blocking the road. And that is a big thing. The road and green are not suitable for parking. The green is private land. It is owned by the residents. It's in a trust, and there is a condition that there is no parking at all on that green. And that is a significant concern with a house which has got 6 bedrooms. How many cars is that going to generate? And if there's only parking for 5 cars, if there are additional cars, where are they intending to park? I do believe that there is a clause in the deeds of the houses on Burton Close to say that they will not park on the road. I've not actually seen the deeds, but that's what the residents have led me to believe, and that's, in my opinion, quite significant. The residents, when we've spoken a lot, we've looked at the plans. Obviously, thank you to obviously the agent for putting them together, and like I say, for Megan for looking at them. Although it is called a remodel, the residents, of course, when all 4 walls, the roof and rooms are being effectively demolished, it feels more like a rebuild than a remodel of what already is a significantly large family home. The entire glass stairwell, it's really not in keeping with the close. If you visited the area, there is a big concern to the residents. I appreciate that there are trees on the green and the properties opposite, but they are deciduous trees, and there will be times of the year when there is no cover on that green when you're looking across the close. That is a significant concern, that entire glass front is not in keeping or character. The agent has actually put in the paperwork that the question in the paperwork, is there a new or altered access? The agent answered no. I don't know, Megan, if you can confirm, but the plans do state an alteration to the curb for access. So that's actually incorrect, that the agent has put no. It says the question in the application is, will any trees or hedges be removed? Again, the agent says no, but if you look on the south side, there is a pear tree, a very established pear tree next to the carport. With the removal of the carport, surely that tree will
be removed. So therefore, again, the agent has said no, but that's incorrect, or we believe it's out of incorrect. The residents have a very strong, they are a very, very strong community. That's what I would say. That's what I've gathered from meeting with the residents, speaking to the residents. They're a very, very strong community. They describe their homes as in harmony and worry the Close will be losing what they describe as a sound family home and the harmony of the Close. And this is really strong feeling. Some of them have lived there for over 40 years. So this is a big thing for them when you're thinking about, is this in character for this area, for this Close? I've said about the Close has a great spirit of community, and the residents' final big point is the design, in their opinion, shows no thought for its impact on the residents of the Close. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cresswell. If you want to just stay there a second whilst if anybody would care to ask Councillor Cresswell any questions. Very comprehensive there. Thank you, Councillor Cresswell. Have we any questions for the other speakers, please? Councillor Pierpoint.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I ask the applicant to sit at the table while I just go through a question for them?
Can you come forward, please?
You said in your opening statement that you'd invite the residents to a meeting or into your home. I mean, you also stated that a lot of this will never be in this position today. And I think the problem is, if I'm reading it right from what you've said and what I've heard from the other people, you clearly haven't communicated what you wanted to do on this project. And if it was my house and I was going to do all that in that Close, and I've been to your Close on Sunday and I had a look round and drove round, I would certainly call a meeting of all the residents. I would show them my plans. I would explain to them what we're trying to do. I'd listen to their concerns. I'd explain all their concerns, how you're going to overcome all the questions that they would have. And clearly there's been a very poor communication here, because I don't think we should be arguing about this at all, to be honest. I thought the situation is very clear.
Councillor Pierpoint, can we just say it's not about your comments, it's about asking a question.
Yeah. Can I ask you, did you call a meeting initially to explain what you were going to be doing?
No, we didn't. We submitted our plans, and as soon as they was aware of the plans, we was expecting them to come and knock on our door. But we was unaware that it had worried them so much until the complaints came in, and they was all on the same date, and virtually the next day, where obviously they had a meeting and hadn't invited us either.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I think that's going about it the wrong way. I can't.
It's not comments, we're not here.
All right, okay. I disagree to what you've said. Could I ask the other lady to come and sit in front as well?
Is there anybody else wants us to ask a question? Councillor.
I'd just like to ask the lady, when you soon realised that everybody was against it, why didn't you then go to them rather than just ignoring it and just doing it yourself anyway?
We didn't ignore it. We just didn't want to antagonise the community any further.
Do you not feel that by not cooperating as soon as they asked you and you realised there was these objections, that you actually antagonised them even more?
No, I thought it would be best if we just, well, I don't know.
Any more questions? No. Okay, back to Councillor Pierpoint. Can you come? Sorry, would you take your seats again, please? And
yeah, can I ask the other lady to come forward, Patricia? If I was a resident in that Close, and I've seen the Close, and you've been there a long time, and it all looks very nice and pleasant and picturesque, etc., why didn't you not call a meeting of that family to find out what was going on? Because to me, that's what you should have done.
We felt it should have been the other way round. I know that sounds, but But yeah, we felt that what it was said, why didn't it? We heard that it was said, why didn't they come to tell us? But we were exactly in the same position. Why didn't they come to tell us? And surely it was up to them. It was them that were having the plans, not us. So surely the ball was in their court really first. We only heard because the neighbouring properties had letters, and so gradually it sort of spread round. So it was really drip by drip, really going around the close, sort of finding out. And we felt it would have been better the meeting coming from them, because then it's them that want the changes.
But my question to you is, why did you not then decide that they're not going to come to you? Why don't you not go to them and start the ball rolling and do it that way?
I'm not quite sure, because I wasn't involved at the very beginning with the main bulk of people. I just was volunteered to do the speaking today because I was the only one brave enough. Sorry. So I'm not quite sure.
Are there any more questions? Anybody else like to ask a question? I've got a question for our planning officers. One is, has the footprint of this new build moved towards number 11 past the where the carport and garage footings exist now?
I believe the annex is actually further north than what the existing carport is. So there's a bigger separation distance to that boundary line with this annex proposed, as opposed to the distance that's created by the carport being by the boundary.
So it hasn't moved any nearer?
No, not nearer. No, further away, slightly further away.
And understandably, I know Burton Close. And again, I can see that the residents would not want to be shaken out of the beds on a Sunday morning. What sort of restrictions on building times can we bring in if we were to pass this with conditions?
So there's a couple of options in terms of conditions, Chairman. We could condition construction hours to be something along the lines of, it's up to committee in terms of exactly what hours, but the general condition that we would attach would be 8 AM to 6 PM weekdays, no working on Sundays. There is also the potential to request a construction management plan, where the onus is then on the applicant to submit a document which sets out how they'll manage noise, what construction hours they would work, how they'd manage deliveries, and how they'd suppress things like dust and noise and vibration. There is a couple of options available if the committee felt that was necessary.
And also control parking on that road because of deliveries, etc. They'd have to have a delivery stroke quarantine area on their plot so that didn't happen.
That would form part of the construction management plan. The difficulty we would have is that if the road is privately owned or public highway, in either situation, we wouldn't have control over the road. So it would be up to them in the construction management plan to demonstrate how they would be able to deliver off the road onto their site, and enable any delivery lorries to be there for the shortest time possible and not cause a blockage.
Councillor Broughton.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to ask the planning officer as well. Councillor Creswell pointed out that 2 of the agents' answers are incorrect regarding the entrance of the building, the potential of the removal of the pear tree. Why has this not been questioned with the agent?
Just picking up on that. So in terms of the access, if they're just amending a curb, we wouldn't class that as creating a new access. There is already an existing driveway. Dropping a curb wouldn't be classed as creating a new access for an existing one. It's just widening the existing one. In terms of the pear tree, I'm not entirely sure what that relates to. From the photos, I can't see a tree at the front. So I'm not entirely sure about that one. I mean, in terms of the overall proposal, it would be a minor issue that wouldn't affect our recommendation in any case.
Yeah. Councillor Cresswell, after you speak, I'm afraid we ask you to leave the meeting. Councillor Austin, you have a question.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I ask the planning officer a little more about the planning condition that's proposed on the annex? How is this policed? How are these conditions policed? I mean, in 10 years' time, there could be several changes of ownership or whatever. Does it depend entirely on neighbours inquiring, or how does it work in the long term?
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, in terms of enforcement, it would be some reliance on neighbours if they notice anything different going on in terms of reporting that to us. Also, council tax. If we start getting council tax for separate dwelling, that would also be an indication that there's an enforcement issue there. They're sort of the main ways we would enforce these types of conditions.
I presume also if a new address appeared, such as 10A, then alarm bells would ring. Okay. Councillor Walbury.
Yes, I've got a question for our planning and legal team. There seems to be a lot of issues around parking. It says that in 5 point, no, it's not 5.2, sorry, somewhere. Sorry, I'll get a bit closer. There seems to be a lot of issues around parking, and it says in the document that there are enough parking spaces for 4 to 5 vehicles. Yet Councillor Creswell stated there were 6 bedrooms. To allay fears, would it be sensible to look at requesting a condition for 6 parking spaces so that we can ensure there is no on-road parking? And also, is there space for 6 car parking spaces?
Just in terms of parking, obviously we've consulted LCC Highways. They raised no objections to the level of parking. The level of parking is in accordance with our planning policies as well. So in terms of further restricting it or requiring any more, it would be difficult in the sense that LCC have said it's not an issue, there's plenty of parking, and therefore that's why we were satisfied with the level of parking is sufficient for that number of bedrooms.
Yeah, but we've heard quite a lot today about access on that road with bin lorries and emergency services. So if 6 people were occupying bedrooms and they all had cars, Councillor Creswell did bring up this point, then should it be sensible to make sure that the homeowner has enough parking so that allays the residents' fears that there will be no on-road parking? It seems like a large garden. You know, I haven't studied the layout of the parking proposal, but is there enough space to add, as a condition, another parking space so there is 5 to 6 parking spaces, not 4 to 5?
Yep, they've demonstrated 5 available parking spaces. And like I said, without any objections from Highways, it'd be difficult for us to ask for more than that. Highways have suggested that that would be acceptable, and there's no impact on local or private highway safety. So in terms of that, we'd be limited in terms of what we could ask for.
Is there enough room for the 6th, though, in your opinion, in the planning legal opinion?
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of conditioning a 6th parking space, just following on from what Ms Marwood said, planning conditions have to satisfy 6 tests. One of them is they have to be reasonable and the other is they have to be necessary. The scheme complies with all planning policy and LCC Highways policy in respect of parking space, and there are standards that are applied in terms of size of dwellings and minimum number of parking spaces required. And as it conforms with that, it therefore would be very difficult for us to substantiate that a condition requiring an extra parking space meets the test of necessity or reasonableness, I'm afraid. I would have to urge caution in doing so. Thank you, Chairman.
But it passes all the tests, but there's a group of people here sat here today that's extremely worried about this. So
Not relevant. We're here to deal with the legislation and all the recommendations from these other bodies, and countermanding those leaves us open to appeals and costs and everything that goes with it. So it is unreasonable for us to ask for what is not legally necessary.
okay, fair enough.
Councillor Evans?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the subject of the parking, 6 bedrooms doesn't mean 6 adults. And with grandchildren and other people, I really feel that 5 spaces is absolutely ample. Just what I feel. Thank you.
Yeah, please say it again.
Sorry about that. Yes, as Councillor Woodliff said, the RAF are getting in the way. 6 bedrooms doesn't mean that it's 6 adults and therefore 6 cars. I think the chances really of 6 adults is a bit slim. 5 parking spaces is ample, in my view. Thank you.
Councillor Woodcliffe.
Thank you, Chairman. It looks though all the legislation is in favour of the applicant, and I can understand that, but I suppose the question in my mind, if 3 levels are really good, R4, R5, R6, R7, R8, where is the office?
Councillor Woodcliffe, it's not about your opinions.
No, it's not.
You're here
I'm
to ask
asking
a question.
I'm asking a question.
Well, when we get to it then, please.
I'm given a question. That's the question.
Well, we're asking it to.
The officers. The officers answer.
What's that, the planning officers?
Yes.
Right, and your question is?
The question is, what's the restriction on the levels? If we have 3 levels here, is there a restriction on levels?
Thank you.
In terms of restrictions on levels, I would just say that we've assessed the application in front of us. They've proposed to raise the roof, and we've based our assessment on that in terms of levels.
So,
that's your answer.
Thank you. Yes, I suppose I
Does anybody else like to ask?
Well, can I finish? Or am I
well, if you want, if you're the next in line again, I'll ask you to speak again.
Well, normally
but don't just keep continuing on from one question to another.
Well, have we done that, Chairman?
Well, we're having this discussion, and I'm not impressed by it.
That's all right.
Is there anybody else wanting to speak? Councillor Woodcliffe.
Right. Thanks, Chairman. Well, it looks so all the evidence sent, it lines up behind the officers and the recommendation in front of us. I don't really see any way around opposing this plan. I understand how the neighbours will feel about this castle being built in their territory, but the reality is that I don't see how it can be opposed. So, I mean, I'm happy to recommend this, move this application. And I'll leave to see if there's a seconder.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, we have moved in. There's no more questions. We have moved now into the debate part. I appreciate your comments there. Has anybody else got any points that they want to debate? Councillor Pierpont.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a bit at a crossroads here because I thought the residents their complaints were a bit cosmetic for my liking and a bit lightweight. And then at the same time, I'm also got a problem with the owners of the property who clearly didn't communicate their plans and ideas to the residents. And I'm not quite sure which way I would vote on this, but at the moment, I'm not very happy with the proposal going with the application. So I'm a bit at a crossroads. I can't support that one. I'm afraid. Sorry.
Okay, well, my comment on that would be, I don't think the way somebody puts their proposal forward or their application forward or discusses with their neighbours is part of planning. That's an opinion on how they get on with each other. So perhaps that shouldn't be part of our decision making. Am I correct there, legal or?
Completely agree. Thank you, Chairman.
So we have a motion to propose from Councillor Woodcliffe. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Bedford.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Quite happy to second this. At the end of the day, the applicant does not have to talk to neighbours, comment with neighbours or whatever. There is a planning notice put up and then it's up to the people around there
to actually find out what the actual planning application is all about and then object if they feel like it. But in all honesty, I think if this went to an appeal, we'd be laughed out of the chamber. I really do. It's there's nothing on substantial planning grounds to refuse it. So I'm quite happy to second it.
Thank you, Councillor Bedford. I have to say my opinion is much the same. It's an emotional subject, and I understand that. But if you look at the black and white of the issues, you're quite right. It is difficult to argue against that. What was it legal you were?
Thank you, Chairman. Just obviously during the course of members questioning to officers, there seemed to be some discussion and concern about the construction management plan. Obviously, Councillor Woodliffe's proposal was just the officer's recommendation, so I just wanted to remind members if that's something that's of concern, a proposal would need to come forward with those as additional conditions to the officer recommendation, or Councillor Woodliffe would need to amend his proposal if. But just to be clear, the proposal currently on the table is just the officer's recommendation without any construction management plan.
Councillor Woodliff.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll accept any amendments that members consider appropriate.
Okay, well, I would suggest you want to put those forward that you think are appropriate conditions to go with this proposal and second for us to go forward with the vote.
Yep. So Chairman, I'd suggest approval, delegation to officers to attach the construction management plan condition. That'd be acceptable.
And what about time working?
We can include that under the same condition.
Okay.
Bedford agree.
Okay.
That means the amended.
Councillor Bedford, do you agree with your seconding on to those conditions?
No problems at all.
Okay. So, members of the committee, we move forward to take a vote, and the first one is all those in favour of the proposal. You need to announce it.
Thank you, Chairman. We have 11 in favour.
Are we any against? One.
Thank you, Chairman. We've 1 against.
So I think at this point I have to say that that is carried, and we have approved that application. Thank you, everybody, today. You've all conducted yourselves very, very well, I have to say, but I appreciate it's an emotional thing, and I hope that in the future you can all perhaps have that meeting, get together, have a barbecue together, raise a glass in the mill, whatever you need to do to get yourselves all hugging and kissing again. Thank you. You're just going to take a minute to stop the streaming. You're welcome to leave.